It started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are boring. Forgettable. That's what made it perfect. The sky was gray that morning, overcast in the kind of dull way that sucks the energy out of a room. My apartment smelled like burnt toast and old coffee grounds, and the radiator made that slow, wheezing noise I had grown to hate. I watched the steam curl from my mug, pretending to savor the moment like someone who still had things to live for. In truth, I was already gone. My name is, always, Caleb Mercer. I worked in a windowless office on the 7th floor of a beige building that hummed with fluorescent lights and dead ambition. No one ever noticed if I was 5 minutes late or 10 minutes early. I could disappear behind a monitor for hours, and no one would care unless the system crashed. I had no wife, no kids, a few acquaintances, the kind who liked posts but never asked how you were doing. My parents lived 3 states away, retired and sunburned in Florida, more interested in golf scores and church gossip than whatever their son was up to these days. I wasn't depressed. That's the part no one believes. I wasn't running from debts or hiding from enemies. I was just tired of going unnoticed, tired of feeling like a glitch in the system. The idea didn't come all at once. It trickled in over time, during lunch breaks, long walks home, empty Sunday afternoons. What if I vanished? What if I just slipped out of the frame like a background character in someone else's movie? But faking your death is harder than it sounds. You can't just leave a note and walk into the woods. People have cameras now. Cell towers track your every step, and banks know more about you than your own family. So I spent the better part of a year planning it down to the hour. I started with the basics. I learned about cold water drowning, the kind where the body sinks and stays down, where the current does all the dirty work. I read stories of people who vanished hiking, never found again. But those stories came with risk. You disappear into a forest and someone might actually come looking. I didn't want to be found. I wanted silence. Eventually, I settled on a bridge. The Marion Street Bridge, to be exact, old, narrow, and just high enough. It overlooked a bend in the river where the current was swift and the banks were lined with thick brush. Tourists never came out that far, and locals had better places to be. The perfect spot. I bought a burner phone, paid in cash. I deactivated my social media account slowly over a few weeks. I canceled my gym membership, then my internet. Each little cut was invisible. No one noticed when I stopped liking their photos or posting lukewarm memes. I even left my job 2 weeks prior under the guise of a remote freelance opportunity. I sent the standard goodbye email and got a few polite replies. One said, "Best of luck, Caleb." I never responded. The last step was my apartment. I left the rent paid through the next month, forwarded my mail to a P.O. box I'd ditch later, and packed only what I needed, a small backpack with cash, clothes, and the ID of a dead man I found online. I'd paid for it through an encrypted site, and it had arrived 2 months earlier in a plain envelope. The name was different, but the face was close enough. I left a single item behind, a note, not a dramatic one, just a folded scrap of paper wedged under a mug on the counter. All it said was, "Sorry." Then I went to the bridge. It was nearly midnight when I arrived. The wind bit through my jacket, and the river below looked like a ribbon of oil. The sky was moonless. Perfect. I checked my watch. 12:07. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket, typed out a single text, and hit send. I dropped the phone into the water and watched it vanish. Then I tossed an old hoodie over the edge, the one I'd worn in every profile picture, the one my neighbors would recognize if it washed up somewhere downstream. And that was it. That was the moment I died. I didn't jump, of course. I climbed down the embankment, wading through cold mud and wet grass until I was out of sight. My boots squelched as I made my way along the riverbank for nearly a mile before cutting through an abandoned service road I'd scouted weeks before. My heart pounded the whole time, not with fear, but adrenaline, like the feeling you get after narrowly missing a car crash. I was alive in a way I hadn't been in years. By the time I reached the cheap motel I prepaid in cash, I was shivering and soaked. The clock barely looked up when I walked in. I handed him the ID. My new name was Eli Barker now, and he slid the key across without a word. Room 112. A flickering light above the door. One bed. One window. One way forward. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept imagining sirens, someone banging on the door, or my name on the news. But morning came quietly. No headlines, no knock, just silence. I walked to a diner 5 miles away, bought eggs with exact change, and waited. Still nothing. A week passed. Then two. I checked newspapers, online forums, local Reddit threads. No mention. No missing posters. No news article titled "Man Vanishes from Marion Street Bridge." Nothing. I checked my old number. The plan had expired. No one had called. Not even once. I don't know what I expected. A little concern. A phone call from my mother, frantic and breathless. Maybe a visit from a former coworker asking if I'd been all right. But there was nothing. It was like I'd never existed in the first place. By the end of the third week, I stopped checking. I dyed my hair, shaved the beard, bought new clothes at a thrift store in a town 2 states over. Every day, I walked past people who didn't know I was supposed to be dead. Sometimes, I wondered what would happen if I just told someone. Confessed. But what would I say? That I faked my death and no one noticed? It didn't feel like freedom. Not the way I imagined. It felt like being a ghost with a heartbeat. Invisible, but still breathing. The silence that I once craved was starting to press down on me like a weight. I had escaped everything, and yet nothing felt different. Until the letter arrived. It came to the P.O. box I'd nearly forgotten. No return address. Just my real name, Caleb Mercer, written in shaky block letters. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, grainy. It showed the Marion Street Bridge, taken from below. And standing near the edge was a silhouette that looked a lot like me. Only, I hadn't been on the bridge at night long enough for anyone to take a picture. I stared at it for hours, turning it, squinting, studying the corners. No clues, no marks, just that figure and the date scribbled on the back. The night I died. That was the moment I realized someone had been watching me. Someone had seen me fake my death, and they were letting me know. I stared at the photo for hours. It sat on the Chip Motel nightstand like a ticking bomb, the grainy black and white image almost vibrating with meaning. The silhouette on the bridge looked like me. My height, my posture, even the slouch in my shoulders I'd never noticed until now. The photo was dated, handwritten, sloppy ink on the back, March the 14th, 12:08 a.m. The exact time I had staged my death. But I hadn't seen anyone. I'd checked, watched the road for headlights, scanned the area for joggers or drunk college kids. Nothing. I had been sure I was alone, but I wasn't. The letter had no return address, no note, no explanation. Just a photo, folded neatly, sealed in a plain envelope, the kind you'd use for bills or funeral notices. I slid it back inside and tucked it into the bottom of my backpack, like maybe it would stop existing if I couldn't see it. But it didn't go away. The photo became a splinter in my mind. I started jumping at every creak in the motel walls. I stopped sleeping. Shadows moved in places they shouldn't. One night, I woke up convinced someone was breathing outside my window, but when I flung it open, there was nothing but the flicker of the busted parking lot light. I told myself it was paranoia, that I'd faked my death so well. I was now haunted by the idea that someone cared. That was supposed to be the irony of it all, right? The grand joke? No one noticed. So why did this feel like I was being hunted? By the end of the week, I checked out of the motel without a word. I moved 3 towns over to a converted attic above a bakery. Paid under the table. No ID required. The place smelled like cinnamon and old wood, but it was quiet. I picked up temp work moving boxes in a warehouse. No one asked questions. That was the point. I became someone else. Eli Barker, a quiet guy who kept to himself and didn't go out much. The kind of man no one remembered after he walked past. But the photo followed me. Not physically, at first, just in my thoughts. I'd see bridges and imagine cameras in the trees. I'd catch my reflection in storefront windows and wonder if someone else was watching too. Every now and then, I'd wake in the middle of the night convinced I'd heard a footstep on the stairs. But I was always alone. Or so I thought. Then the second envelope arrived. It was slipped under my door while I was out buying bread and canned soup. When I came home, there it was, white, unmarked, resting on the floor like it had always been there. My hands trembled as I picked it up. This time, there was no photo, just a single message, typed on a scrap of paper. You should have jumped. I dropped it like it had burned me. I checked the locks, the windows, everything. Nothing was broken, no signs of forced entry. Just a quiet creak of the old ceiling and the hum of the bakery fridge downstairs. But something had changed. Someone knew where I was. Someone who wasn't just watching. Someone who was close. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in the corner of the room with a knife from the kitchen drawer clutched in my fist like a child scared of monsters. But monsters don't knock on the front door. Monsters don't slide notes under your floorboards and vanish like smoke. The next morning, I packed what little I had and left again. This time, I didn't go far. Just enough to change the scent trail. A crumbling apartment above a boarded-up liquor store. Cash rent. No questions. I didn't even bring the photo. I burned it behind the building using a lighter I found in a drawer. Watched it curl and blacken until it was ash. But the third message came anyway. This one wasn't in an envelope. It was carved into my door. Not dead enough. 3 words, deep and jagged, like they'd been etched with a key or knife. I didn't report it. Who would I report it to? The police? Tell them I was a dead man being stalked by a stranger who may or may not exist. I had no legal name anymore. No digital footprint. No one would believe me. And worse, someone might figure out what I'd done. So I left again. And again. Each new town offered less comfort than the last. I avoided cameras, paid for everything in cash, stayed in run-down places that smelled like mildew and regret. Still, the messages followed. Sometimes they were scrawled on napkins tucked into my coat pocket. Other times they came in whispered notes through motel phone lines. Once, I returned to find the words "still watching" drawn in condensation on my bathroom mirror. The sickest part? I started to crave them. Each message meant I wasn't invisible. Someone was noticing me. Someone cared. Not in a warm, friendly way. No, this was obsession. Cold, methodical. But it was still attention. It was a thing I had longed for before I faked my death. Someone saw me. Every choice, every hiding spot, every alias. It was like playing chess with a ghost. But ghosts don't leave footprints. One night, while walking back to a room I'd rented in a church basement, I heard it. Footsteps. Not behind me, beside me, keeping pace. Just out of view. I turned fast, heart in my throat. Nothing. The alley was empty, damp and dark, the only sound the distant siren of a train. But I felt them. The footsteps. The weight of another presence. That night, I dreamed of the bridge. In the dream, I'm back at the edge. But this time, I'm not alone. Someone is there beside me, a figure in a black coat, face shrouded in mist. They are whispering, but I can't hear the words. I lean closer. Their breath smells like river water and rut. Just as I strain to listen, they push me. I fall. I wake up gasping, soaked in sweat, my hands clutching the edges of the mattress like I've been dangling off a ledge. Outside, the night is still. But inside, my chest is pounding. I know now that someone is following me, not to hurt me. Not yet. They want something else. To remind me. To haunt me with a decision I made. To turn the silence I crave into a prison of paranoia. I decide to go back. Not to my old life. That's gone. But to the bridge. The place where it all began. I don't know why. Maybe to confront whatever this is. Maybe to finally end it. Or maybe just to prove to myself that I'm still real. I rent a car under a fake name. Drive overnight. Park 2 miles from the Marion Street Bridge and walk the rest of the way in the dark. It's colder than I remember. The wind cuts sharper. The river is louder. And when I reach the bridge, I see it. Someone is standing there, right where I stood the night I died. They are facing the water, motionless. I freeze, heart thudding. The fog rolls in thick, and for a moment I think it's a trick of the light. But no, the figure is real, solid, and they turn slowly, as if they knew I was coming. I can't see the face, just the outline, and something in their hand. A phone, my phone, the burner I dropped into the river. My knees go weak. I don't move. I can't. Then the figure lifts the phone, and snaps a photo. The flash blinds me, and just like that, they're gone, swallowed by the mist. I run to the spot. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of struggle. Just silence, and the cold sting of dread creeping up my spine. I don't remember the drive back. I just remember the feeling that I wasn't being hunted randomly. This wasn't coincidence. This was planned. Whoever was watching me, they knew everything, and they weren't done yet. I didn't sleep for days after the bridge. Even after I left the state, even after I ditched the rental car and checked into another faceless motel under another throwaway name, the flash from that phone haunted me. It had been too bright, too deliberate. It wasn't just someone taking a photo. It was a signal, a message. Someone wanted me to know they were still there, that they had never left. I spent the next week inside, curtains drawn, TV on low. I hardly ate. Every knock on the door made my heart seize. I became a ghost of a ghost, shuffling through shadows, afraid of my own reflection. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was something deeper, something worse. This wasn't just someone following me. It was someone studying me. Every move I made, every town I fled to, every time I thought I had vanished, someone had been there, watching, recording, waiting. I started thinking about the photo again. The first one. The one that showed me on the bridge when no one should have seen me. I had burned it, but now I wished I hadn't. There had to be a clue in it, some fingerprint, some subtle tell. I tried to remember every detail, the grain of the photo, the angle of the shot, the timestamp. Who had taken it? How long had they been standing there? What else had they seen? My mind went places it shouldn't. What if this person wasn't just watching me now, but had always been? What if this had started long before the bridge? I needed answers. But where do you turn when you're supposed to be dead? There was one person. Someone from my old life. Someone who might not slam the door in my face. Her name was Mara. We worked together at the data firm 3 years back. She had been kind, smart, quiet, like me. We shared a few lunches, a few conversations about life, books, how the office always smelled like printer ink and disappointment. Nothing romantic, just a fragile thread of real human connection in a sea of cubicles. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year, but I remembered where she lived. Or, at least, I thought I did. It was a risk, a huge one. If she called the police, it was over. If she didn't remember me, or worse, didn't care, I'd be walking into a dead end. But the walls were closing in. I had to do something. I bought a gray hoodie, a pair of sunglasses, and hit the road in a bus full of strangers. 12 hours later, I stepped off in the city I swore I'd never return to. Mara's apartment building hadn't changed. Still the same rusted gate, same overgrown hedges. I stood across the street for nearly 2 hours before I worked up the nerve to cross. Every time someone passed by, I flinched. I imagined a shadow in every window. When I finally rang her buzzer, my mouth was dry. "Hello." Her voice, distant and cautious. "It's Caleb." Silence. Just the buzz of the intercom. Then, "That's not funny." "I know, but it's really me." Another silence, longer this time. Then the door clicked open. She lived on the 3rd floor. Her apartment smelled like vanilla and books, like it always had. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes wide, trying to decide if she was seeing a ghost. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. "I know." And then she slapped me. It wasn't hard, but it was sharp, a jolt of reality I hadn't felt in months. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped. I didn't answer right away. I just sat down on her couch, the weight of months crashing down on me in one shuddering breath. I told her everything. The bridge, the plan, the photo, the notes, the figure with the phone. All of it. Her face changed as I spoke, shock fading into fear, and then something colder, curiosity. When I finished, she stared at me for a long time, then finally said, "You're being hunted." It wasn't a question. It was a fact. I nodded. She stood, began pacing. "You don't think this is someone from work?" "I don't know. It could be anyone. That's the problem." Mara turned toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just slightly. You were always distant, Caleb. But I never thought you'd just vanish like that. We all thought, well, most people thought you'd killed yourself. I know. No body, no note. Just a hoodie and a rumor. That was the point. She gave me a look. And now someone's keeping you alive by chasing you. The room went quiet. She was right. It hadn't just been about disappearing. It had become about being seen. The sick irony that I had become more alive in death than I ever was while living. Why come here? She asked. Because I didn't know who else to trust. Mara sighed, running a hand through her hair. I shouldn't be helping you, she said. But I will. She opened a drawer and pulled out a small black USB drive. I work in cybersecurity now. Sometimes I freelance. People hire me to track strange things, patterns. I can try to trace the messages, the images, if you still have any of them. I shook my head. I burned the photo. The rest were physical. She cursed under her breath. Then we start with you. Me. You. Your digital trail. Your history. There might be something you missed. Someone watching from before the bridge. This doesn't feel random. This feels obsessed. I slept on her couch that night. It was the first real sleep I'd had in weeks. The next day, we started digging. Mara pulled up old email accounts, work logs, security metadata. She ran everything through layers of analysis. I watched as a digital map of my life unfolded before me. Timestamps, access logs, login attempts I didn't remember making. And then we found something. 6 months before I faked my death, someone had been logging into my old work computer after hours. Remote access from outside the company's network. They hadn't altered anything, just looked. Opened files, searched for keywords, and always backed out clean. No trace, no alert, just eyes watching from the shadows. Mara leaned back from the screen. This isn't a stalker, she said. What is it then? It's someone who knows what they are doing. Someone with skill. Someone with time. I felt sick. She turned to me, eyes serious now. This didn't start after the bridge. It started before. Someone was watching you while you were still alive. A name popped into my mind. A face. Pale. Forgettable. I hadn't thought about him in years. Do you remember someone named Jonah? She frowned. Jonah? Worked with us. Sat near the copier. Always wore the same coat. Creepy, quiet guy. Used to stare at people when he thought they weren't looking. Mara's face paled. Jonah Hale. I nodded. He died, she said. What? Right after you left the company. Car accident. Hit and run. I stood up, heart pounding. Are you sure? She typed quickly, searching. News articles. Police reports. There it was, plain as day. Jonah Hale, 31, pronounced dead on scene, no known relatives. But there was a photo, a small, grainy one. My blood ran cold. The photo wasn't from a driver's license or company directory. It was surveillance still. And behind him, just barely visible in the reflection of a glass door, was me. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. The photo of Jonah, with my faint reflection in the glass behind him, burned like an afterimage every time I blinked. Mara was still clicking through files, but I couldn't hear her anymore. The air in the room had shifted. Thick, like smoke. Like something unseen had entered with that photograph and now refused to leave. Jonah Hale was dead, but somehow he was still part of this. Still watching. Or worse, he never died. It didn't make sense. None of it did. I hadn't seen Jonah in nearly a year before I disappeared. We hadn't been friends. Barely co-workers. He was one of those people you forget even exists until he's suddenly standing behind you in the elevator. Always quiet. Always present. And now, somehow, still haunting my story from the grave. There's something else, Mara said, snapping me out of it. She pulled up another file, a string of security camera logs from our old office. I pulled these from a leak we had 2 years ago. Thought I'd deleted them. What am I looking at? She pointed. That's Jonah. But look at the timestamps. She clicked between feeds. In each one, Jonah moved down the hall, always past the same room. My office. Same time of day. Every day. Even when I wasn't there. I leaned closer. What was he doing? Waiting, she said, voice flat. Oh, watching. And then she showed me the last video. March 13th, the day before I faked my death. Jonah, sitting at a desk. Not his own. Mine. He was logged in, clicking through folders, emails, personal documents. And just before the feed cut out, he looked directly into the camera and smiled. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just a creepy smirk. It was knowing, mocking, like he was daring someone to catch him. But is dead? I whispered. Mara was already searching again. Sometimes people fake their own deaths, she muttered. Sometimes it's easier to vanish than face the consequences. The words hit like a slap. I had done the same thing. And maybe, so had Jonah. A new window opened on her laptop. Public records. Obituaries. Death certificates. She pulled up Jonah's. Official. Clean. No foul play. Body unclaimed. Cremated. That's convenient, I said. Too convenient. And then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, frowned. What is it? I asked. It's an email from an anonymous address. She opened it. One sentence. His in the walls. No subject line. No signature. Attached was a file. An audio clip. She didn't want to play it. I could see the hesitation in her face. But I needed to hear it. The file was scratchy. Low volume. Like it had been recorded through layers of static. But under the noise, a voice. Breathy. Barely human. Caleb, still running. Not enough. I froze. The voice sounded wrong. Like it had been warped, digitally twisted. But it knew my name. And then it laughed. That laugh wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, like something curling under your skin, crawling down your spine. Mara slammed her laptop shut. I'm done, she said. Whatever this is, it's gone too far. You said you'd help me. She stood, pacing. This isn't about code anymore, Caleb. This is obsession. It's ritualistic, psychological. It's like whoever this is, they need you to suffer, to spiral, and you're letting them. I didn't argue, because she was right. I was unraveling. The messages, the surveillance, the ghost of Jonah Hale. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. I had been so sure I was in control. That faking my death was a choice, an escape, but now I saw it for what it was, an opening, and someone had stepped through. That night, I left Mara's apartment. She begged me not to, said I needed rest, a plan, but something was pulling me forward, like a rope around my ribs. I took a cab downtown, to the industrial district, to the one place I had never gone before, but knew I had to, Jonah's last known address. It was a condemned building, a brick relic from the 1930s, chained shut, windows cracked. But there were footprints in the dust outside, new ones, leading around back, through a rusted fire door barely hanging on its hinges. I slipped inside. The air was stale, damp, the kind of place where time goes to rot. The halls were empty, save for graffiti and silence. I moved slow, heart pounding. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that something was waiting. And then I heard it, breathing, shallow, labored, coming from upstairs. I climbed, each step creaking louder than the last. At the top was a room, one flickering bulb, a desk covered in papers, screens, wires, and something worse, photos of me, hundreds, some from before I faked my death, some from after, different cities, motels, moments I didn't even remember happening. Someone had been with me, all along, close enough to touch. On the desk sat a phone, my burner, the one from the river. I reached for it with shaking hands, but a voice stopped me cold. Looking for this. I spun. He stood in the doorway. Jonah. Not a photo. Not a reflection. Not a memory. Jonah Hale. Pale. Thin. Smiling that same, awful smile. I thought you were dead. He shrugged. You first. He stepped into the light, and I saw the truth. He hadn't aged. Not really. But his eyes were wrong. Empty and endless. I watched you, he said softly. Every day. You didn't even know, did you? Why? Because you were sleepwalking through your life, and I wanted to see what happened when you woke up. I backed toward the door, but he raised a hand. You died for attention, Caleb, but you got something better. You got me. I didn't understand. Couldn't. This was never about you disappearing, he said, stepping closer. It was about proving you never mattered. You followed me. I made you. That hit like a hammer. What? He leaned in close. Too close. I nudged you. Here and there. Little things. Emails. Notes. The right words at the right time. You thought faking your death was your idea. It wasn't. I fed you the fantasy. I just wanted to see if you'd do it. The realization hollowed me out. He had been there from the start. Whispers in my inbox. Shadows in the office. A ghost building my descent, brick by brick. And I had played right into it. You're insane, I said. He smiled wider. No, I'm just awake. He stepped back, gesturing to the walls. All of this was to show you what you are. Forgotten. Replaceable. Dead even while alive. I looked around, at the photos, the recordings, the obsession, and then I saw it. A single frame on the far wall. A mirror, but not just any mirror. It was my old bathroom mirror, from the house I had left behind, etched into it, barely visible beneath layers of dust. I see you. The same message from months ago. This hadn't started at the bridge. It had started long before, and Jonah had always been there. I ran, down the stairs, through the alley, into the street. I didn't look back. I kept running, lungs on fire, legs numb, until the city blurred. When I finally stopped, I realized something. I could never disappear again, because the one person who noticed was the one person who should have stayed forgotten. I didn't stop running until dawn. The streets blurred under my feet, colorless and cold, and the sound of my heartbeat throbbed louder than the city itself. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving. Jonah wasn't just chasing me anymore. He had hollowed me out, step by step, until all that was left was a shell filled with fear. But fear was no longer enough. He wanted me to break. He wanted me to shatter and scatter into the wind, forgotten and nameless. But somewhere in the chaos of my breath, in the static behind my thoughts, something new stirred. Anger. He had built this game, brick by brick, like a twisted maze where every turn was already mapped out. He had been behind the emails, the photos, the voice on the recorder. He had planted the seed that bloomed into the idea of my disappearance. He wanted to prove I didn't matter. But if that was true, why follow me? Why watch me? Why keep me alive? Because even he wasn't immune to the pull of his creation. And that meant I still had something he needed. Attention, control, meaning. And I was going to take that from him. I didn't go back to Mars. It was too dangerous. Instead, I found a pay-by-the-hour motel on the edge of the city. I paid in cash, closed the curtains, and opened the laptop I stole from a pawn shop 3 blocks away. Jonah had built his web of surveillance, but now it was my turn to trace his. I remember the folder on his desk, old tech, clunky. He wanted to stay offline, invisible. But I'd seen something else. One screen had flashed a name. Odinai, a deep web hosting platform for black hat surveillance communities. Somewhere I'd only heard rumors about, where stalkers, hackers, and the untraceable traded secrets and footage like currency. If Jonah had left a trail, it would be there. I dug for hours, skipping sleep, eating from vending machines, eyes dry and red. And finally, I found it. A user named No Spectre, active for 3 years. Always anonymous. Always precise. Their posts were like manifestos, rants about invisibility, control, the art of vanishing. And their latest post? A photo of me, posted 3 hours ago, taken from across the street. The caption, final phase, the ghost knows. I stared at it, bile rising in my throat. He wasn't hiding anymore. He wanted me to see. To know this was his endgame, and I had just stepped into the last room. I leaned back, breathing heavy. It wasn't just about stalking. This was performance art, psychological warfare. Jonah didn't want to kill me. That would be too easy. He wanted to unmake me, to erase me, not from the world, but from myself. But what if I did the one thing he didn't expect? What if I stepped out of the maze? What if I faced him? I bought a cheap phone. One number, one call. Tomorrow, she picked up on the first ring. You're alive. Barely. Where are you? Doesn't matter. I need your help. There was a pause. Tell me. I'm ending this. We met in a parking lot beneath a closed-down mall at 2 a.m. She looked pale, shaken, but ready. This is insane, she whispered as I handed her the phone. You sure you want to do this? I can't keep running. He's watching every shadow. It's time someone watched him. She nodded, then looked away. There's something you should know. What? I did some digging on the name he used. No Spectre. Cross-reference it with black site data breaches. Someone with that handle accessed a server linked to experimental surveillance research. A DARPA offshoot. Closed 10 years ago. My blood froze. What kind of research? Behavioral manipulation. Synthetic identity mapping. Creating ghost profiles. Digital possession. What the hell does that mean? She looked me dead in the eyes. It means Jonah might not just be stalking you. He might be rewriting you. It all clicked. The messages, the voice recordings, the mirror, the reflection. I wasn't just being watched. I was being reshaped. Jonah had studied me so deeply, so precisely, that he had begun to replace me. Not physically, but psychologically, digitally, erasing me by learning everything I was. It was why he always stayed one step ahead. Because he wasn't following. He was living me, and now he was finishing the job. We traced his IP to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Abandoned. Of course. Every horror story ends in a place no one would dare to look. The door was open. Not broken. Not forced. Inviting. We stepped inside. Dark. Cold. The faint hum of machinery. Screens glowed against the black, flickering images of me, looping endlessly. Sleeping. Walking. Staring at nothing. Moments I never remembered living. And then he spoke. You came. His voice came from everywhere. Not just speakers. From the walls. From inside me. I stepped forward. No more games, Jonah. Oh, but this was never a game. This was an awakening. And you were the dream. I spotted him in the corner, behind a wall of glass. Thin. Pale. Eyes wide and wired. I was just like you, he said softly. Invisible. Until I learned the truth. What truth? That the only way to exist is to become the absence. He raised a hand, and the screens behind him lit up. Images of me, fading, one by one, static creeping in, my features dissolving. Soon, no one will even remember your name. You're sick. I'm free. I looked at Mara, then at the cables behind the servers. We had one shot. I sprinted. Jonah screamed, a sound that barely felt human, and slammed a panel, sending sparks across the floor. But it was too late. Mara yanked the cables. Hard. The screens went dark. The room groaned. And Jonah began to glitch. I don't know how else to describe it. His body jerked, twitched, like something inside him had lost its signal. He gasped, mouth open, no sound, then dropped to his knees. I stood over him. His eyes flickered between rage and panic. Who are you without me? He choked. I leaned close. I'm the one who remembered my name. And I walked away. The fire started 10 minutes later. We never lit it. But something inside the building sparked. Maybe the servers. Maybe Jonah himself. We didn't go back to check. We just walked until the sun came up. I didn't return to my old life. There wasn't one to return to. But I didn't vanish either. I kept living. Quietly. With purpose. With presence. And every now and then, when I catch my reflection in a window, I stare a little longer, just to make sure it's really me. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it hesitates. But I always remember. He wanted me gone. Forgotten. But now, the world remembers me in the most haunting way possible. I faked my death, and someone noticed. Too much, and for too long.